We're going to start off our webcast today, which is part of our continuing series about how to modernize the enterprise and what to do within the modern enterprise. And with our partner Nintex, today talk about how to implement Agile methodologies and how to take advantage of it. And our previous webcast, we showed the modernization of the enterprise around the change in applications, application structure, the rise of the cloud, and gave us a point and context around contract lifecycle management. But let's talk a little bit about how one would go about implementing a solution of type. So a little bit about our stock and trade, about who we are. Going on 20 years now as a Microsoft Gold partner, and we won multiple awards over the years. Being in New York alone, we have a very large practice around professional services in general. And we've worked historically off of that Microsoft stack as well as the Nintex stack of solutions, and are one of the top partners in North America. And so getting past that quick piece of business there, let's talk about sort of the header of it and redux this section and what we presented previously, which is the history of customizations for SharePoint and legacy customizations. Traditionally, on-premise, firms over the years built a variety of WSPs or customizations that were deployed at the farm level. And these were commonly used to connect other database systems, automate provisioning of assets, enabling external sharing of content, and very commonly used InfoPath forms for the front end, and etc. But there are a lot of disadvantages then, and particularly now as it related to this customization on the farm level approach. For one, WSPs themselves limit what tech stack you can use as part of this process. So you are limited to .NET, and if you have other skill sets in-house, you weren't taking full advantage of those. And that's the inability to use the latest and greatest in technology. If you have other tech stocks and tech stack experts in-house and the like, you are not able to use them to develop and customize SharePoint. It also complicates pretty excessively and potentially customizations as it relates to future releases of SharePoint, and of course with hybrid, which is where the world has been moving to for quite some time and will continue to do so. Also required high level developers to maintain these customizations, and with that, very difficult to scale. And there's significant overhead in the cataloging and maintenance and documentation of this inventory of customizations. It's been very common in our own experience as we would encounter clients that, you know, you would think you had 20 and it turns out you had 100 and nothing was documented. And so just a slew of problems around that. And there's other points that really also drive the risk around the use of WSPs. For one, they interact with each other, and you build one customization to address or extend, and all of a sudden your other customizations now fail. These things are directly deployed to SharePoint on the farm, and you know, everything from destabilizing that farm to maintenance, degradation of farm level performance, and it's very difficult to remove. These are some of the other disadvantages of WSPs that just have been historically noted by ourselves and colleagues across the SharePoint ecosystem. And the big one and the big takeaway we keep bringing to our clients is they just simply will not work once you go to the cloud. And in large measure, we've had a number of companies say they would never go, and they're going now. There is an inevitability to the cloud. And with that hybrid and eventual move to the cloud, you really need to change how you build, deploy customizations and solutions off of that stack. So traditionally, you had monolithic solutions. There's server-side code, very heavily reliant on T, service interruptions during upgrades and cycling, and it takes a long time. This is always the problem with waterfall methodology, which we'll get to in a moment, is that even though you think you have more control over the deliverables, in fact, you don't know when you're going to get the solution to the client. And this is a common problem that business users will echo, is that when am I getting my solution? And with that delay, you have a delay on the return of investment that you made, and again, a dependency on specific builds of .NET. So the current and now and future model is app-based solutions, where nothing is deployed on the farm directly. So it's sort of back to the future, where you're building applications, but now using modern web technologies that allow you to use not only .NET, but other stacks as well, and to glue things together and communicate with these underlying platform products using traditional modern methodologies like web services and API calls and all that. And what's great about app solutions is, one, they don't bring down the farm. In fact, if you're in Office 365, you can't go to the farm because it's multi-tenant. And app solutions are much more user-centric. They're much more centric on the user experience. And once they're built, there's minimal IT involvement. And again, no downtime during the deployment. You wire them up, they work, they don't work, you bring them down, but nothing else goes with it. And so within the modern SharePoint enterprise, this began in 2013, and with 2016, it's just going full throttle ahead, is this new model, the app model, if you will, has your apps there, and you connect SQL Server, Azure, and services and data, and everything is cloud-driven and connects. And so this way, you're sitting outside SharePoint, you call to the application or the platform, and there's sort of immediacy and user experience driven approach to customizations and solutions satisfies what we call the retail effect, and we'll get to that in a moment in greater detail. So Nintex, and you have choices, right? You can build your own, which we do for clients. So take your WSPs, build new modern apps in-house. You can buy off-the-shelf stuff like our sister company, Project Ready, is a fully based SaaS solution set that's out of the box in a modern application set. And then there's Nintex. And so if you are going to go the route of build it yourself, which is still highly applicable and valuable, Nintex is really the platform that we feel most exemplifies the modernization of the way you build solutions driven for the business with a modern technology stack, particularly with Nintex Workflow Cloud that is not even dependent upon SharePoint. Again, we're living in a modern internet-based world, if you will, where those technologies are now full bore. And so with that, Nintex is the market leader in intelligent process automation. They've been around since 2006. They, as of this slide, and I'm sure it's grown since, have over 7,500 customers, 90 countries. And really, in terms of their partners and their client base, really there's second to none in the world as it relates to process automation and the ability to build modern solutions on a modern application model that is driven for the end user. Here are some of their logos. I'm not going to read them at you because there's a lot of them. And with that, some great ROI metrics to take away with you as it relates to Nintex's impact on the business in terms of ROI and savings and payback and all those other things that, you know, at the end of the day, IT is not just about technology. Anything that involves collaboration has a huge social and political element to it, and by far not the least important thing to consider is ROI, is getting funding from the institution that you work for to get the budgets you need to build the solutions that you are commissioned to deliver to your business clients. These are some of their connectors, and again, we'll distribute this at the end of the webcast. We'd like you to fill out our questionnaire. We can send you this deck. These are some business cases, contracts, which we showed you in our last webcast, quote to cash. And again, I won't read the slide at you, and we'll make this available to you post-webcast. And so with that, I want to get into the real focus of today, which is about Agile versus Waterfall. And Gig Werks, back in its day, we were a custom dev shop. We built custom applications as it related to client requests and, you know, TFS, a Team Foundation Server, all those kind of tool sets that you would expect. And with that, however, we really began to embrace Agile and figured out how to bring Agile methodology successfully to our clients. So the Agile approach is iterative, where you're planning, building, reviewing, planning, building, reviewing, and with it, you get to involve the business. You're getting constant end user feedback, and it's flexible, and ultimately, it's far lower risk. And we'll talk about how you mitigate that risk and what some of the concerns that we've heard out in the marketplace are. And it's business-oriented. It is really about understanding that solutions are not something that information technology specialist builds and brings to somebody, it's an absolute collaborative process. And this is something that was always historically lacking in waterfall. Waterfall, presuming that you can figure out every business requirement up front and deliver it solid on time, was a great idea, but it just, in terms of practical purposes and the way it works with the human animal, that's always the core of why you do this. Waterfall, we have found a high degree of failure because it's rigid. It doesn't involve the end user enough, right? At the beginning, without context of seeing a solution and working with that team, your end users are out of the loop until it's too late and you've delivered something where now you've had no ability to manage change management. And it's a very long time to value, and historically has been known to drift over time. Because once you do this waterfall approach and you drop it on the person's desk, lo and behold, you miss something. So Agile is a sort of a mature understanding of how solution building has to work to address people, end users, your clients. So there are other reasons that drive Agile for the enterprise, not the least of which is what I referred to earlier and said we come back to, which is the retail effect. So SaaS, software as a service, end users want and expect, and this has been going on for quite some time, that the same sort of immediate gratification they get when they go on their iPhone and purchase an app, this is what they want for their departments. And frankly, most companies, they're paying for it through chargebacks and the like. And so this is now an absolutely ingrained, immutable expectation of end users. They want it on demand, they want it right away. And this is where we've seen that most of the downside of waterfall has really been driven is the frustration that end users have of going, well, this isn't what you showed me actually, I didn't get to see it now, and why did it take so long? So Agile and its end user centric approach, its flexibility and its ability to acknowledge change and manage change through that mature understanding that change happens. Well, in this regard, so Agile's flexibility makes that change part of the process, right? And with that, you keep at a minimum risk the potential to not satisfy your end users, right? And if you are going to go in an Agile methodology, at the end of the day, collaboration is intelligent process automation. And this is where Nintex really comes into play, because as you're building these tools, you're always working with your users and you have rapid development and you remove the risk of custom development. And again, business involvement. It's something that I can't emphasize enough. In previous webcasts going back probably 10 years, I had stated that, you know, when your guys are going to go ahead and build a solution, it's got to have a committee that's regularly involved. And that's back in the waterfall day. Well, Agile understands the importance of that committee and allows you to manage it insightfully. So it all sounds great, but there are two common concerns that you'll hear when you go for an Agile budget. I mean, Agile is saying, hey, this is what you're going to spend this year and this is what you're going to get. We've heard with understandable cause where people go, hey, this is just a running meter. I'm not even sure what I'm getting because we're doing this inside sprints. So, you know, if it's all sprints and we're defining it on the fly, then how do I know what I'm signing on the bottom line for? And is this meter just going to run forever? So we understand that. We've been doing this for a lot of folks. And so how do you address some of these concerns and really get Agile to work for you? The reality is that you don't have a running meter. You actually have much more control of budget because you have what you have, and that is what you work with. Off of that, you know what a minimally viable product is, or MVP, and the delivery of that baseline you lock in stone. And so at that point, you also will have, as part of your inquiry and your ongoing sprints, you're going to have other features that you've identified up front. You're going to pick up other features and requests as you go along. So you manage to that remaining budget, and you prioritize the needs that were identified up front, the nice-to-haves, have-to-haves, all that kind of process. And then with it, if you know what your goal is, that it has to do, the solution has to do this minimally, by this date, essentially you just manage to budget, right? And with it, your end users get a product in their hands when you promise them they would get it. Your CFO isn't annoyed that you're coming back for excessive capital, And then you can manage your budget without micromanagement from others around you so that you can pivot on the development of key features. And then through that process, you get to the end of it, you go, well, we got our MVP, there were 12 other things we'd like, we got 6 of them, so what's next year's budget going to address but those other 6, and so forth. And so this gives you not only realistic control over budget, realistic ability to set expectations for your users, it also allows you to set budget and expectations year over year, quarter over quarter. So how do you know what you're going to get? So what we've done, and I've lovingly referred to as semi-agile, is that upfront to satisfy your constituents, cross-constituents, IT, the budget office, procurement, and the users, you do some level of what would be more like waterfall planning, but it's high level. You capture what the requirements of that minimally viable solution is going to be. You capture the known value adds that you need to have, and you work in that very first phase before you get in front of the sprints and the rest of the execution, a clear definition of what is our minimum that we have to get out, and when do we have to get it there. List out those features, prioritize it, and then enter into a more full-blown traditional Agile process. And so this way, you're going to get some core, some milestone, something that everybody can agree on and point to, but then go into sprints where you can involve the business, correct course quickly, and then review, rinse, and repeat, and just over and over and over again. And this flexibility allows you to stay on budget because your budget is your budget. You know what you have to get by a certain date. You make sure that's your focus, and then everything else becomes value add. And going back to the modern application model, these are apps. You can plug them together. You can modify them. You don't have that risk of building something monolithic on a farm level. Now, so the true advantages as it relates to Agile, to sum it up, is it is actually better on cost control and change management than waterfall is. Done correctly, it is more predictable, and there's less risk and by far more transparency. Nobody likes a surprise when you're spending considerable amounts of money on a budget. And it's very scalable. Regardless of the size of the project or the institution, even the number of the teams, this methodology just works, and it works across organizations of type and need. And this, again, going to some of my earlier webcasts, you have committees for features that set priorities. Don't exclude the business. Nobody runs the show. This is, in fact, Agile allows democracy to work functionally within inside an enterprise. And with that, you can achieve your corporate goals in a much shorter time frame, always showing improvement, always delivering to the business based upon essentially what we just presented. And so change management, COs, as a vendor, I can tell you right now, I hate change orders. We are not a legal firm. I like to know what I'm building. I like to add value. I want my customers to come back to us. We have long-standing relationships with our clients because we really take seriously defining well what they're going to get, right? And so with change management in waterfall, it's always COs, and that, in fact, is a running clock that you cannot predict. Now, with Agile, you now have the ability to make these changes on the fly while sticking to budget and priorities. And you get greater sponsorship back from that business because you're always getting feedback from them. You can adapt quickly to the business's input. And with that, you have weekly reviews, you pivot objectives. You know, if someone is out there, there's a new hire, it's easy to stay on schedule and provide that continuity. And again, involve the business. So, it's the modern applications. That's how we have found success working for major clients and implementing and working with an Agile budget and schedule. Where does Nintex fit in this? So in our custom services division, the reason why we're such ardent supporters and experts on Nintex and have our recognition therein is because Nintex is absolutely perfect for Agile. Nintex is a no-code solution. It's a visual designer. So literally, you can sit there as you're working on your verbose use case, you start to develop things, draw it out on a screen, a power user can participate in it. They can, you can give it to a power user inside your shop to design the flows and somebody else to write whatever custom connector you might need. But you can visualize what you're building right in front of your client and make those pivots and changes that Agile gives you benefit and demands of their process. It's also easy to learn. It is, again, no code, and with it, you can involve power users, BAs, traditional developers. They can all participate on a single platform and see what they got, and because it's not custom and no code, well, you essentially have a toolkit where you know what's going to work and how it's going to work. So one of the primary risks of Agile is the how do I know how I'm going to get it and how much it's going to cost and when, goes away if you know you're using a product like Nintex that has pre-built connectors to like 100 different systems, and we all know how it works. So now you can turn around things quicker. You can get in front of the client. You can very rapidly move from dev, from dev to test to build, and you can quickly access development and assess where you are in that process. So it scales. There's nothing custom. You have built-in standards and support from one of the largest third parties in the Microsoft ecosystem globally. So again, Agile versus Waterfall, right? And using Nintex in it. Waterfall is rigid. It's transactional. It's very proprietary, programmer-driven, and can go months to years, and in fact has the higher risk as it relates to the two ways of doing it. Now, if you go the Agile approach and you bring Nintex into that, so you're not even building your own monolithic apps even on the Agile and modern app model, but really taking a toolkit that accelerates that process, now you've been afforded something that's dynamic, flexible, pre-built, fully supported, and you really can greatly reduce time to market and related expense drastically from days, from months and years down to days and weeks. And we have seen this quite a bit within our own practice. So we do have sort of a next step, if you will. So as we've done this for other accounts, the way we've engaged them at the head, and for those of you who are larger firms and you have Microsoft planning dollars and like, we're registered in those programs as well, where we would go in, and we've done this again before, we offer this to the group today, to go in and review what legacy systems and processes you have, get some use cases, make recommended conversion paths. Are you going to use Nintex, build your own, obsolesce, get something off the shelf? And that assessment will allow us to give you folks an estimate, an approach to get to what you need to do to modernize the enterprise so you can move forward as new tools and the like roll out, and help you run an agile process to complete your vision. We do thank you today. Hopefully this was somewhat informative for you, just because we hear a lot of debate and we've been living this agile waterfall transformation for some time. Any additional information or assessments or any of that other stuff, please do reach out to us. And again, we just want to thank everybody for their time today. Thank you.